Breaking news tops our three things you need to know at 5 o'clock. We now know it was a former Marine who opened fire, killing 12 people in California.
The crowd was dancing to country music at a bar when a man in a hooded black sweater opened fire. We're also learning about two more young women who say a D.C. priest sexually abused them.
And it was a crime that rocked a D.C. neighborhood. A young jogger stabbed to death in Logan Circle. Tonight, we're learning more about what the suspect did in the moments leading up to the attack. But we're going to start with another tragic mass shooting in America, this time in Southern California. Thousand Oaks, about 40 miles northwest of Los Angeles. A Marine combat veteran entered a crowded country music bar and opened fire and killed 12 people. At least 20 others were injured. It was a college night event at the Borderline Bar and Grill. John Henry is here to tell us more about what happened, including the story of a brave law enforcement officer who died trying to save the lives of others. John?
Adam, victims called the scene horrific. Others were just left in shock, completely puzzled that a college night at a bar is not safe from gunfire.
The officer down. Advise if it's CHP at the Borderline. Officer down.
A man walked into the Borderline Bar and Grill shortly after 11 p.m. and started blasting away. The gunman, dressed in black with a smoke bomb and a handgun, takes aim at a crowd of hundreds. Panicked, everyone immediately runs for cover.
Before it happened, it was just a normal Wednesday night, just having a good time. And as soon as it all started, it just went to utter chaos.
First on scene, Sergeant Ron Helis of the local sheriff's department. He charges inside but is immediately shot. He later died at the hospital.
Sergeant Helis was amazing. He was a warrior. He was always the guy that stepped up first. As a sergeant, we don't really have to respond to calls, but he was a block away.
Helis served on the force for 29 years. He planned to make next year his last in law enforcement before retirement. Police say the shooter, 28-year-old Ian David Long, took his life. Officers interviewed the former machine gunner and Afghanistan war veteran just last spring. We're told the visit to his house came after he began to act in an agitated manner.
I understand that was part of the discussion when the deputies went out to the call with the crisis team that felt he might be suffering from PTSD, basing that the fact he was a veteran and had been in the Corps.
Now, the shooter was found dead. Authorities believe he may have killed himself. Coming up at 5:30, we'll show you what it was like during the shooting inside that bar. Adam?
So tragic, so sad, John. Thank you. And as you just heard from John, we just got that new video from inside the bar. It is very graphic. So what we're doing, instead of showing it to you at this moment, we're going through it right now to make sure that it is appropriate for air. We're going to have that for you, as John said, coming up at 5:30. Now, USA Today is reporting that the Thousand Oaks rampage is the 307th mass shooting of 2018 on the 311th day of the year. That obviously averages out to about one mass shooting every day this year. Now, the worst mass shootings of the year include the tragedies at Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, Santa Fe High School in Texas, the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh last month, of course, the shooting at the Capital Gazette in Annapolis, and last night at the Borderline Bar in Thousand Oaks, California. Combined, more than 50 people lost their lives in those shootings.
Now to a story that rocked a D.C. community. Accused Logan Circle killer Anthony Crawford muttered to himself and rocked back and forth in court today as prosecutors laid out their case against him. The 23-year-old has a history of paranoia and delusions, and detectives believe he stabbed Wendy Martinez to death in September just because she happened to jog by him. Bruce Leshan was in the courtroom and joins us now live from the D.C. courthouse. Bruce?
Yeah, Leslie, we thought this preliminary hearing was going to wrap up today, but it has been taking much longer than expected. And so we're going to have to wait at least until tomorrow to find out if the judge thinks that there's enough evidence against Anthony Crawford for the case to proceed. But I'll tell you what, there is a ton of evidence.
A terrifying and apparently random murder caught on video in busy Logan Circle. Newly engaged Wendy Martinez stabbed repeatedly while passers-by watched in horror. Detective Charles Foltz laid out the evidence against Anthony Crawford at the courthouse. The detective says Crawford took a knife like this from the Giant grocery just 20 minutes before the attack. Witnesses say Crawford was acting so strangely they crossed the street to avoid him. But Martinez was caught by surprise. Witnesses heard a woman scream. Crawford allegedly slashed her throat, severing her carotid artery and her jugular vein. She stayed alive just long enough to stumble into an Asian carryout and plead for help. Witnesses say they saw the killer drop a knife and take off a blood-soaked sweater. Investigators say they found Crawford's DNA on both those items. More than a dozen of Martinez's friends and relatives crowded the courtroom as a judge weighed whether there is enough evidence against him for the case to continue.
Now, when Crawford wasn't muttering to himself and holding his head in his hand, he was sort of ostentatiously taking notes with his left hand. Now, police say that he stabbed Martinez to death with his right hand and that there actually were cuts on his right hand from that stabbing, cuts that left blood behind on the ground, blood that turned up with his DNA on it. Live at the D.C. courthouse, Bruce Leshan, WUSA 9.
It is hard to hear those details, Bruce. Friends and family of Wendy Martinez have set up a scholarship in her name. If you want to contribute, you can look for the Wendy Martinez Scholarship Fund on GoFundMe, and we'll have a link on our app and website.
Now to a developing story about a D.C. priest who is facing charges of child sex abuse. Since our story ran last night at 11, we're learning more about the two teenagers who have claimed abuse at the hands of 46-year-old Urbano Vasquez. Police arrested Vasquez yesterday. He was an assistant pastor at the Shrine of the Sacred Heart in Columbia Heights. All three of the alleged incidents happened in 2015. Vasquez is accused of fondling a 13-year-old girl under her shirt, graphically kissing a second girl when she was just 16, and a third victim claims the priest was inappropriately rubbing her leg during confession when she was 15. The Archdiocese has removed Vasquez and the pastor of Sacred Heart from the ministry. Vasquez was released after today's court appearance. He was ordered to stay away from D.C. and from minors.
To Arlington County now, where two teens are facing charges connected to a school threat on social media. Police say the pair created a Snapchat video that contained verbal and written threats linked to a possible shooting at Washington Lee High School. And working with that school, the students were identified quickly and located. Their names are not being released because they are juveniles.
Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in the hospital right now after she fell down and broke 3 ribs. We see a lot of you sharing this story on your social media pages. So Ginsburg initially went home after the fall, but the justice was then taken to George Washington University Hospital this morning after experiencing some discomfort overnight. Ginsburg has been on the high court since 1993. She's 85 years old, the oldest of the 9 justices and one of its 4 liberal justices. So the White House is compiling a list of candidates to replace Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He appeared to be fighting back tears as he left the Department of Justice last night for the final time. At President Trump's request, Sessions resigned earlier yesterday. His chief of staff, Matthew Whitaker, was named acting Attorney General. Whitaker has been critical of Robert Mueller's Russia investigation, and some on Capitol Hill are calling for legislation to protect the special counsel.
We had legislation ready to go that protected Mueller, kept him in place, let him complete and finish. I would hope that we can bring that back up, have the support, bipartisan support, to protect this investigation to get it completed.
Protecting Mueller was on the minds of demonstrators outside of the White House last night. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is rumored to be in the running to replace Sessions.
Now to a yellow weather alert with a raw and rainy day on tap for tomorrow. Topper joins us now, and what are we talking about for Friday? What's the timeline?
I have some good news.
Okay.
Friday morning, not so bad. A couple of showers, but this time tomorrow night, not so good. Yeah, not so good. It's going to be another raw November day. All right, let's talk about rainfall. How much rainfall could fall? Some of the models are becoming a little more aggressive. We sort of thought this might happen. So the RPM and the North American model all over an inch. And here's the deal. Most of this falls in a 6-hour period between about 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. tomorrow. That's going to be the critical hours. But still, that said, a couple of showers are possible in the morning. But I think 90% of us will have a dry commute to work. Okay, threats. Thunderstorms low, heavy rain, that's a moderate threat. Winds low, no threat for tornadoes with this type of a system. So we're just talking about just a quick batch of heavy rain. Now this is in the morning. Okay, a couple of showers possible here and there. And temps in the 40s, upper 40s downtown, below to mid 40s in the burbs. And then by 11:30, just a lot of clouds. Temperatures haven't moved much. Here comes the rain, about to cross over I-81. And then by the time we get to 2:30, 3 o'clock, see the yellows and oranges? That's heavy rain, and that's just in time for the beginning of the evening commute, and that will continue as we go through the evening. Even by 6 o'clock, still some heavy rain up and down 95. We'll come back. We'll talk about if we clear out in time for Saturday morning, and we'll talk about the coldest air of the season and then even colder air after that.
Still ahead, protesters target the D.C. home of Fox host Tucker Carlson. The frightening incident forced Carlson and his wife to take cover and call for help.
And a little later, they survived sexual abuse at the hands of someone they trusted. Tonight, 3 young women are telling their courageous story.